I feel like I've seen enlightenment, and I thought it was going to be about levitating and telekinesis, and it's actually just about an increased awareness of how annoying I am. Wait, so do you know what I thought would be a fun opening for an episode? Is some of your recordings of you on mushrooms in your notes app.
That would be really good. Oh, right now? Right on the spot like this?
I mean, we could do an impression of it. Can you do an impression of it?
Let me see if I can just go in there and like see if I can grab a random one. Where's my voice memos? Okay. Some of these are not labeled. DMT trip with Conrad. 1 hour and 18 minutes. I'm sure that's nothing.
18 minutes of silence.
Okay, that's a song idea. I never label these.
You know, the ideas are going to come, and we'll be recording. God, they know we're getting warned.
Fast forward a little bit. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Are you hiking? Did you say I'm going to record this because the ideas are going to come?
Yeah, it's just silent. The ideas are coming, but they're not being vocalized.
Dude, I would pay money.
It's just literally all silence. There's nothing. That's the end of the recording.
I would pay money to have my acid notes from when I first started psychedelics.
That's how fragile it all is right now. Entirely and beautifully. Yeah. Like I was going to have to do it 700 times. It's right here. Because it's so familiar. To do it this many times, that if you become so familiar with something, it becomes fucking annoying. And then you drop it. And you get lost in it again. It comes back around. To the point where it's like, yeah. The very idea of somebody listening to this later, i.e. myself, whatever that is, maybe picking up on this at a later state, can be understood as just like a whole separate cycle of processes and understanding of tensions, focusing itself down at one point. It's the very root of being. Is a mysterious place you can't ever know about. And when you try to put words on it like this, you sound like a fool.
Yep, that's 36 more minutes of that. We're going to save you from.
Okay, but that was kind of weird because we haven't listened to these in 5 years, and all the ones I heard were like, wait.
Yeah, so there's...
Wait.
Probably,
but that one was kind of deep because it was like...
It was getting
like
through.
Time traveling, yeah.
It might be later in that one that... It's a lot of breathing.
Last 3 hours, I've been eons of time. I mean, when you conceptually get into this, like I'm right now in the forefront of this cycle around being right here, right there.
I started singing because I think I was getting nervous. Don't try psychedelics, kids. Yeah, there's
God,
a lot of...
my
I'm
glasses.
surprised I got some of those like coherent words through. I think later it is, I just give up and I'm like, yeah. I'm glad I recorded a lot of those. There's a bunch in here. I mean, some of them are very short, some of them are nothing. But there are things that I pick up on that I'm glad I record because it does... I remember something from it, you know?
Right.
And I'm able to kind of process it soberly. But it is wild when you're trying to do that in the space to pull the data out and like write it down or record it. It's so difficult to do.
Yeah, what's interesting now, I mean, I guess we haven't done psychedelics in over a year, but when I first started doing psychedelics as a teenager, I would get revelations that you could not bring back. Like you could not bring them back. And then when I was going through my awakening, we were doing ketamine, GHB, whippets, like all these things that would let you touch the other side. And then I would always I remember being on, I guess it was whippets, like trying to grab everything and then being flung back into reality and being like, fuck, I lost it. And then trying to go back in, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not my experience with psychedelics at all now. If I do acid or mushrooms or whatever, I feel like I very easily, it feels like kind of just a very visual evening at home. And then everything I figure out in the mushroom is very easy to bring back. And I guess that's just the veil, right? The veil's not so thick.
It's not so thick. And we're able to, I think it's like you start to learn how to ground certain frequencies in, that when you do alter your frequency into that psychedelic state, it's not as foreign. It's kind of like, oh, this is a little bit more familiar. Therefore, you can bring that information back a little clearer.
Oh, I guess maybe also the categories of reason, right? Like as our categories of reason expand, because a lot of things I feel like I could understand when I was altered, I didn't have the categories of reason for in my 3D brain, you know? Speaking of altering, so we put out the episode yesterday of about the weed and the feel free. And I'm shocked. I've only heard from one person who has experience with feel free, which I guess is good. Mm. It's funny. Everyone's talking about the weed, but we're like, no, but the feel free.
Yeah. I mean, the weed may be a little more common.
More relatable.
More relatable, but which is probably good. I think there's some people that have experienced more kratom than the feel free, which they're different. I don't know. It's the same feeling, but feel free is way more powerful, I think. And that's what's like the danger of that, whatever concoction it is. Yeah, but I was surprised there weren't more people talking about that. There's one person that.
Yeah, one person reached out. Oh, and then there was a comment. Most people were very supportive. It seemed like a lot of people were in the same boat with the weed. And then today I saw something about this eclipse in Aries also does impact addictions and habits. I know someone else quitting something else, so must be in the air.
Yeah, and that sounds like it's supportive of letting go of some of these things.
Yeah, it's also like big breakup energy of any type, right?
Yeah, it's like letting go of things that just aren't working anymore.
Right.
And sometimes that's you have to face that soberly, like, oh shit, I have been in denial about this for a while. But now's the time, man, because the astrology is supporting you letting go of it. So
right. Yeah, this astrology right now is very similar to 2017, spring of 2017. The nodes are in Virgo and Pisces. They were switched in 2017. And there is a Venus retrograde in Aries. And it's crazy how many things from my life are repeating right now that were happening in early 2017. I also feel similar to then, and I feel like I look similar to then. It's very strange, but it didn't click. And I'm loving it. I'm loving this energy, but it didn't click for me until last night. We were outside, and then you went inside, and I was there by myself for a second. And so I don't know if I want to share this. For me, the quote unquote aliens that I talk about, like, they're just my guides, you know? I think it's just me in the future in some way that I don't understand consciousness. I don't know. I don't connect the aliens that they presented as aliens, but I've never really known is that because there is an aspect of me that believes I'm not from here. You know, I don't know how any of that shit works. And I don't put too much effort into it. It didn't seem like I'm supposed to get swept up in the personalities or the whatever. So
you just call them aliens because it works.
I just call them aliens. I mean, they look like aliens, but I am just also understand that they present as whatever is going to be helpful for me to identify them as. And they don't feel connected. They feel very connected to me. They don't feel connected to, I don't know, mass consumption or whatever. So I don't equate them with the orbs or the UFOs or whatever. And I don't know their names, and I just have always gotten the impression that I'm not meant to get swept up in them. And something I noticed when I started talking about the aliens that was interesting was then people were like, what do the aliens say about this? What do the aliens say about this? And I'm like, oh, interesting that like people are looking for an authority outside of them. Yeah. And so then now they want me to talk to the aliens. And I just have always got the impression that it's not that kind of party. But anyway, they show up in my awareness more when there's about to be a big collective awakening. And so otherwise they're just in my head, and I really only hear them as one of the voices in my head when I have my head up my ass. Like if I'm like stuck in victim consciousness, I will hear them like make fun of me. And they do talk. AOD is an attempt to do like an impression of them. They do talk to me like I'm, they just, there's no coddling in that thing. But anyway, then I can physically see them, but I can physically see ghosts and auras and everything else. It looks like, on a hot day, you can see the steam on the ground. It looks like that. So it's like clear, it's moving though. And it's like, I don't know, it's the steam, if the steam had like squares in it or something. And so, I don't like to be alone in dark rooms to go to sleep or whatever, just because if there's any contrast of light, I'll see whatever's there. But so anyway, I was like sitting outside by myself. You had just gone inside, and then 3 of them rolled up, like very funny. And it just clicks in that moment. And I went, oh God, it's about to get very weird. Because I've been saying for weeks, like the energy feels very different. It feels like 2017. It's interesting. And I said, oh, this is about to get very weird. Because I haven't seen them physically, I don't think since 2020. And then I don't know how to describe it. They don't talk. They like laughed, but you just know they laughed. I don't know how to describe how conversations happen in the ether. They're not with words. And then I remember that this time last year, I got downloads about the Mars retrograde in the winter last year. And I just saw a slingshot. And the slingshot has now been released, and we are about to soar into, I think things are going to get very weird in a way that is, I don't know. I feel so much better about the astrology is very volatile. The energy is going to become very volatile, but I think things are going to become so surreal and ridiculous that it's going to kind of not even, you're going to have to put a lot of effort into taking things very seriously. And, I don't know. I didn't mean to go on that little thing. What the fuck made me go there? But anyway.
I just one thing to add. I think that the thing that feels like it's going to become the weirdness, the surrealness of the reality is the amplification of this idea that whatever you perceive, whatever your internal state is and what you're looking for in reality, you're going to get confirmation for. Yeah. And to the extent where it's everybody's, I feel like a lot of people are caught up in like, what is the truth? What is the truth? Get rid of all this bullshit. And it's like the idea of the flat earth thing. Like if you think the earth is flat and you go looking for confirmation of it, you're going to get confirmation of it.
You're going to get that.
If you think it's round and you go look, you're going to get confirmation of it. And that's amplifying to the point where like, if you don't have control over you're not aware of that, you don't have control over your inner state, you're going to get confirmations of whatever is going on. And that's quickly going to start manifesting your reality. And so that's why all the importance that everybody's been talking about is like shadow work, know yourself, get underneath the subconscious, because pretty soon here, you're going to be pulled around by your subconscious, and it's going to confirm whatever you're thinking. And that's the obsession with like an external truth that we all have to agree on is like kind of impossible to do if that's the case, right? It's like everybody has their own truth and that's going to be validated. And so that creates like a very weird reality. Like everyone has different perspectives and they're all being confirmed, yet we're trying to look for this collective one truth. And it's like, it's a paradox. It is true, but it also is not necessarily collectively true. It's true for you. And what are you going to do with that? Yeah, trying to get everyone on the same page or get people to see, or even like shadow boxing the way that other people see things is, I'm going to do an AOD about this hopefully before I leave town. But yeah, it's I mean, it's already cartoonish. I mean, the government was planning. They added a journalist to a group chat. Do you know what I mean? I just assume all this shit's fucking propaganda. But I don't know. It's getting very unreal. 2017 through 2020 hit was, I just kept saying all through 2017 is I'm having a very weird year. Like everything just got very strange. And
I just, there is also an insane incoming awakening happening right now that I can see boiling under the surface. I'm seeing people that I don't think people know are going to waking up. And yeah, it's going to be wild. All right. So this, I really like this question. So on the episode, we talk about the weed and the feel free. I have an honest question. Isn't this just straight edge woo culture? Couldn't it lead to more intolerance and judgment? Everything seems to be a slippery slope. I definitely agree with Mark, though, on listening to your body. Hang up the phone if that's right for you. I love how Jessa respected his autonomy without abandoning herself or him. Yes, I do. So I think we have to stop building cultures around our personal experience. And I think it's hard when the balance, me as someone who, autonomy is very important. And it's very important to me that I respect other people's autonomy. And I do put a lot of effort into that. I also see patterns. And so I do have a lot of, I don't know, my brain has a lot of pattern recognition in it. And so I can never find the word for what I'm looking for when I say, in my opinion. I don't know that altering every single day, is I guess I can't word it that way. I think that altering every single day does put a ceiling on how far you can go in integrating consciousness. What is that based on? It's based on several things. It's based on, I've never seen anyone do it. I've never met anyone who alters every single day that I was impressed with the level of integration and self-awareness and everything else. They're often brilliant fucking artists, whatever. I've met tons of people like that, but I've never met anyone who alters every single day. And I think that every single day is important here. Specifically when we're talking about all day, every day, right? I'm not talking about someone takes a hit of weed before they go to sleep or something. I've never met anyone who revolves their life around altering, who has the self-awareness, which I think self-awareness, awareness of your subconscious, is more important than knowing all esoteric knowledge, as far as I'm concerned. Because if you don't know about your own stories, you don't have any command over the reality that you're living in, or any awareness of the role that you're playing. And it gives you main character syndrome. If you think you are, everyone else is an accessory in your life, you don't understand that you're in a million different movies, you can't hold paradox, whatever. So I've never met anyone like that. So there's that. But I do have all the biases that I listed in the last episode that I am aware of, right? So I am aware of the fact that I'm sober, so I'm going to think other people should be sober. And, it's all of these things. I used to be like this when I was eating a lot of protein. I thought everyone should eat a lot of protein. When I was eating raw vegan, I thought everyone should eat raw vegan. That's the first thing that comes up for some reason when we realize something is right for us. We immediately project it onto all of culture. And that is cross-planning program. It's conditioning. It's conditioning to think when what that is I feel like we need to systemize this thing I learned for myself. And so maybe in that conversation, I thought we were pretty measured with it, but maybe in that conversation, we drifted off a couple times into no one should be able to do this or whatever. Yeah. But I don't think a culture, I think everyone should do whatever the fuck they want. And if it works for you, it works for you. And if my opinion is that there is a ceiling to how far you can go, that doesn't matter at all. It really doesn't matter if you're just someone who listens to this podcast. I don't even know you. But I have people in my personal life that struggle with that opinion of mine, but it's it's just my opinion. I'm not going to treat you different. And I can't change my opinion because it makes it feel I don't impose that on anyone.
Right.
I might have those thoughts and I might watch someone have a bunch of struggles in their life and it's really obvious to me it's because of this decision they're making, or, I might know someone who's in love with someone who is very obviously a piece of shit to me, but I'm not even going to say anything because it's you have to figure it out. you know, I'm not going to fuck our friendship up to let you know that I think your partner's not showing up healthy or whatever, you know? So yeah, I don't think, and that's never what we want with this podcast, but like, yeah, I don't think culture should be established around any, especially anything me or Mark think, because we change our mind every 15 minutes. And as the longer you listen to this podcast, the more you'll be like, you know, we're into this, then we're not into this, and then we're back into this, and then we're trying this, and then whatever. It's like, we're just trying to be like authentic in the moment that we're in. But no, we should not. I don't want to be a part of any fucking woo culture. I want to be myself in the moment and figure things out and be a passenger on this ride. And sometimes I'm very into things and then I think they're stupid and then I go back and try them again and who cares? But that cross-up planning programming tells us we got to make a system out of everything. So Mark and Jessa said that they don't smoke weed. And it's like, does that confirm something you were already thinking for yourself? Cool. Does that feel like not your vibe right now at all? Also cool. Do your thing, you know?
Yeah.
It is so funny how because we absolutely do that, you know, behind closed doors. I'm careful not to do that on a podcast, but I do have to remember over and over and over and over and over again, just because I'm into something right now, just because something is working for me right now, it does not mean that it's for everyone, but you know, I might have that opinion quietly.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I've been off and on of that, like the altering thing, like wanting to abide by that and feeling it to be true, like that you can only get so far if you're altering, but then altering has opened up so many doors. So there's a time and place for it. And some people are still needing to alter more to get that message or keep pushing and cracking open who they are or what the, you know, levels of reality are and what the game is. I think that's very important. Like that's why it was so helpful for me. But just like everything, and kind of like I said in that mumbled mushroom trip, is like things that you become used to, and like you see a pattern of repeating gets annoying after a while, and you start that creates anxiety and uncomfortableness, and that's what makes me then go, okay, let me stop doing this because it's annoying and then see what happens. And usually there's a new level of awareness, something that comes in that is integrative. And so for me, it has been a cycle of like jumping on and off that idea. And I'm now currently back on the idea where it's like, there's a lot to be gained by disciplining yourself off of hitting the feel good button that also does help you, you know, expand certain awareness, but it's just difficult to integrate it when you don't have a sober time.
Yeah. And I just because I don't think that, just based on who I've met and who I've encountered, I don't know a shit ton of conscious people. I mean, I know more now than ever before, but it means nothing. Like my opinion is based on my life experience thus far. And my mind gets changed constantly by meeting someone that I'm like, oh. And to be honest, that's how I felt about you. I was like, once I saw how many blunts you were rolling a day, I thought, God damn, he's really achieved a lot for someone who doesn't let his brain take a day off, you know? But then I saw you sober and was like, oh. But also there's this. But wait, there's more, you know? And so it just doesn't, I think the culture, the tribal programming, the puritanical culture that we come from, the kind of Christian guilt, shame, whatever, is, and the blame faults, it's a trap. And I'm really glad that we happened to do the episode the week before about stop trying to quit. Because we didn't even know you were quitting yet when we did that episode.
Which I think is also very true, which I abided by in my life a lot, is like, don't quit until you really want to. And that's part of gaining the experience of a feedback loop that's not right for you. And you have to figure out that's not right for you to actually stop it.
Yeah, and I did, and this is not a sales pitch for meth because no one else has this experience and it all has fentanyl in it now. But I don't know that I could have woken up without meth. And I did it for 5 straight years, or 5.5 straight years, until I was done. I was literally done. And every time anyone has ever asked me, like, how do I get off of something? I'm like, just keep going until you're done. And when we go back to the body, you know, the passenger consciousness conversation, your body knows, you know, you knew that it was time to quit and then address the decisions that your mind was making for your body, because your body was reacting really poorly to it, right? And that doesn't mean that it's bad for everybody. And I think the conditioning of like blame and fault and good and bad kind of slip in here. So when we talk about the culture of couldn't it lead to more intolerance and judgment, it's just like, yeah, it's nobody's business what anyone else does. Like the culture, if we're going to have a culture, it needs to be set on, I'm learning my lessons right now. And that's it. Like you learned a lot from that. And we had interactions because you are my partner and it's easier for me to do mental gymnastics and try to be controlling in situations. And so the first time you went back to weed, we had a conversation where you're like, or maybe it was a second, I'm just going to be using it in the studio. And I was like, well, you said that last time, and everyone, you know what I mean? Once you start smoking weed, then you're going to be like, oh, but now I'm going to start doing it here or whatever. And you were like, yeah, it's not like that for me. And I was like, all addicts do this, you know, and you're like, I'm not an addict. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like, it's called copping a relapse. And it's where you start like creating scenarios in your head for why you need it. And those things, I think maybe now, years later, you would say are accurate for you. It does nothing that I said it to you years ago that benefited you zero. It actually just made things weird between us. And I don't live in a reality where now do you see that I was right? Because it doesn't. And we've had this opposite thing, you know, where, you know, around like presence and my inability to be present in certain moments, you know. And you tried to point it out to me 100 times and I couldn't, not 100 times, but you tried to point it out to me when it would come up and I like couldn't see it and was like defensive or whatever. And then I had to go learn it myself. And it's just kind of that, I feel like in the old paradigm, it's like this I told you so thing.
Yeah.
But it does nothing. Like if you tell me, hey, this is you trying to relapse or do this thing or whatever, and it's not going to work, and then I don't do it because you told me not to do it, what the fuck is my soul here for?
Right.
You're just my boss. Like, what is the point of that? And so it's the same thing with like being a mom or I'm a lot older than a lot of my friends. And I had to learn the hard way in my 30s. Like I can't, like I'm 8, 9, and 10 years older than my siblings. And so as they were learning lessons, I used to have more of a desire to control, you know, and I had to learn the lesson that like, I can't impose my 40 something years of experience onto this teenager or this 25-year-old. It's her time to learn about the shitty boyfriend, or it's, you know, it's my sister's time to figure out her own relationship with addiction. I can't rescue her from that. I can't dominate her. I can't make her feel judged. So I could sit here and have an opinion based on my own life experience, but maybe she's going to prove me wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's so much of the wisdom comes from like having the experience. You can't hear it from somebody and then abide by it and trust, because it's like it might not be true for you. You have different DNA makeup. You're coming from a different karmic baggage of stuff, and so it's really difficult when it's someone you care about to like watch them, you know, spin around in something that you can see is futile, but that you have to have the experience to actually gain the insight to change. And so it's that like hands-off, non-judgmental thing that you can have an opinion, but like it's not worth enforcing it on someone else, because again, that is like where you become each other's authorities. And what's the point?
Yeah, we're creating dogma for other people that it's just like I
And that is all programming. It's so deep in that like religious dogma thing that's what also I think helped me through this time, like kind of being honest with myself of like what my body was feeling, what my mind was trying to overcome the body with like very intellectual narratives and like highbrow kind of thinking. That this stuff from the Wave series book, it is like, it's a labyrinth that we're dealing with within our own mind and body that has been, it's that predator's mind thing where like we have the DNA and the chemical makeup to be pushed to do certain things through like seemingly carnal desires, like very animalistic motivations. And a lot of that is done to like keep us off track and keep us in a perpetual feeding loop of giving up some kind of energy to these other beings. And it's so subversive and subtle the way that works that it's very difficult to get through. And I think for me, this go around with like kind of abusing external substances, at some point I knew that I was like, I think I said last time, I was like, I'm kind of being attacked in some way. Like I am there's like some distortion being thrown into my field that is perfectly lined up for my weaknesses. Like I like cannabis. I'm highly functioning on it. And so it's something that like is going to be easy for me to intellectualize and override some of these other information that's coming through the body that's like, this ain't right. Please stop doing this. And it's that like it's inside of our minds and in our chemical makeup that is this tension and resistance that's very difficult to get out of unless you can stay open-minded and trial and error. And it's like that feedback loop thing, controlled feedback loops of trying something out and experiencing it, listening to the body and the mind and trying to harmonize those two. It's so difficult because the whole time you're dealing with like a machine that is built as an STS model to like think of itself as important and feed off of others. And that programming is so deep, it's within all of these ideas that we're talking about, like homogenization, systemize things. All of that is like squashing the diversity and the fractal potential of like everyone having their own unique perspective and experiences that are all valid and can harmonize into this fractal thing. Homogenization is the end of that. It's like stagnation. And so that's
right.
The thing that those other energies feed off of, up to a point where it's like you fall out of the reality. Like you no longer have a vessel to live in. And so it's like they're feeding on a psychic level, on a emotional level, and on a like physiological level of your body. It's that advanced. So there's traps everywhere, essentially, you know, and they're individually set up for you specifically.
For different individuals, for different things. Yeah, because I think it's also, I'm just thinking about, because we love cult documentaries. And the thing that's interesting to me about cult documentaries is it's often...
You're talking about like Passion of the Christ? It's a really good cult documentary. Sorry.
It's often like the leader or whatever is on a trip. They're on some sort of trip about something, and then they impose the trip onto everyone. And, you know, I, as someone who resonates with radical personal responsibility, do not think the onus is solely on the cult leader. It's we need to address the desire to have someone tell you what to do, I think, at the root, right? And that applies to all cults, including religious and political ones. If we change the culture around looking for an authority outside of you, we wouldn't have to worry about these sort of things. But
that's a deep ass program. That's like,
it is a deep program, and it's very much what's going to be pressurized in the Cross of Sleeping Phoenix. And so I think we will not run out of cult and scam documentaries to watch. because all of the people who are looking outside of themselves for something will be looking. And so this is what I think is interesting here with this question, and not just specifically this question, but this reminds me of this idea where someone gets on a podcast and says, or a TikTok, whatever, and says, here's my perspective. And we are still so trained to then, the only way I can resonate with that perspective is to apply it to my life. So the perspective has to be either good or bad. Instead of like, that's an interesting perspective. I don't think it applies to my situation right now, but maybe one day, who knows, you know? Or even like, there are so many people where I like their take, like I like the way they presented their take, or I like the way they got to their opinion, or the way they articulated it or whatever. And it's so funny because sometimes I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with your opinion at all here, or it doesn't align with me, but I like what you're doing because it feels very true to you.
Yeah.
You know? And sometimes I want to like it or I want to share it, but then I understand that people with tribal and collective conditioning are going to take that as a wholesale endorsement of the entirety of this person. I mean, I'm still get messages when I share a soundbite of something that I liked, and somebody's sending me like, you know, that person has this other opinion. I'm like, yeah, I didn't read their fucking Wikipedia. I don't even know who this is.
Yeah.
I just like the one thing they said.
Yeah.
But it's that tribal and collective programming. We're so conditioned in the cross of sleep and planning to where we need to systemize this take, you know, and including us, even like maybe in the way that we presented some of those thoughts, where it's not actually how I think or feel. I think the weed my favorite description of weed as a substance is that weed exists on a certain frequency, and for many, many, many people, it takes you higher. And so when you're on the weed, you're higher. And just to clarify for anybody still with hierarchical programming, higher does not mean better. It's just different. Higher pitched is not better than lower pitched, right? But when I think of higher, I think of you can see more of the board, but that does not mean you're better. But then there comes a point where you're just kind of naturally in your process going to have more access, but it's kind of pulling you lower, just because it's just on its own frequency. And I'm sure that actually varies strain to strain and whatever. And so for many years, it literally was keeping you alive. And that was something I was trying to hammer home in the last podcast. I know a lot of people who need it. You know what I mean? Like, it is the healthiest way to treat their anxiety. They are not living in a life yet that they don't have to go to work, or they don't have to deal with people they're out of alignment with. Yeah. Like, the circumstances haven't yet aligned for them to be able to call all the shots in their lives. And the weed is absolutely a tool to like buffer them and help them still be able to create and whatever. And it was that for you for years.
For sure.
And I think that, and I do get a lot of sessions of people trying to quit smoking weed. And if what I sense in the session is that the only reason you want to quit smoking weed is because you are judging it, I will talk you into continue to smoke weed. Now, if we're on the session and you're like, it used to pay dividends and now it doesn't, and now it's just a fucking anchor holding me back, and you know it's causing mood swings and it's affecting my health or whatever, then that's a different story. But it is just something different for different people. I think we can both agree no one needs feel free.
Yeah, that's
which was really the point of that podcast.
Yeah.
You know, and I think something else I think we didn't get into, you know, I think in the future, people will absolutely still smoke weed. I think people will grow their own. I think anytime we're talking about corporations and government and everything getting involved, it has an energy there that is very different than how other cultures have used it. But yeah.
I just still am so into the idea that you can do this endogenously. You can create states without the external bit seems like what that's what I would rather do. I'd rather, and you don't have the negative effects of it, right? If you're creating the chemical yourself, the receptors are there. That means it's possible. So I would rather be working towards doing that. And that doesn't feel like an escape to me. That is an integrative, like, oh, there's a multitude of experiences to be had here. And this technology of the human body that we have, we've been convinced can't do these things, but actually it can. And this is all part of the quickening of manifestation and like moving into a different realm that is not at all like what we assume it would be. It's nothing like this realm. There's no time. So it's quick manifestation, and you don't need external things. You just alter your frequency to go have a different experience. And that to me is like what the whole thing is supposed to. That's why we have all these external drugs that like do mimic the chemical that we can make in our body to hit the receptor to go, oh, this is a possibility. Like, I want to learn how to do that. You know? And instead of this escapism that creates loops that eventually become like annoying and start to degrade the consciousness, you know?
Right.
That to me has always just been like, that's so fascinating to me. And I want that. And I think, like I said, it's just like when you have the experience of the substance bringing you down and not wider, then it's like, okay, well, it's not working anymore. So why keep doing it?
Right.
Then you get off of it and, you know, start to make more effort to try to figure out the internal balances and to eventually achieve altering your chemical makeup inside internally, you know?
Yeah.
And that might not even, it's not even like the point. I think once you get to like a fourth density reality, that it's probably not going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to be in the high frequency all the time. It's going to be kind of a natural thing.
It's just already is. I feel it already.
Yeah.
I feel like the drugs in the fourth density are going to be like, this will slow you down to linear time. Do a drug just to like...
It pulls you into the third density, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, because that's where that exists, is something external you can input. But when you have... I think when we move into fourth density, you harmonize all of that. So there is no external thing that you need all the time. It's natural. You're in that state all the time.
Yeah, I liked this question because it highlights... I sent you something else this week, and now I can't remember what the fuck it was, but it highlights the way that we are oriented towards systemizing ideas, where... You know, I like the language of my body doesn't like weed, you know, or I used weed as an escape without the implication that everyone who uses weed as an escape, you know, or yeah, I'm just really vibing with like my body doesn't like. And I've noticed, because we kind of live in a world where we say stuff like that when I say that to someone else, because the internet is just filled with people being like, meat is killing you. Or then my next TikTok, you know, my next reel is, if you're not eating carnivore, then you're not da. And when I see people like that now, which I used to be like that, but I go, you understand everyone's body's different, right? Like, I literally have a friend that if she eats meat, it's like she has an allergic reaction. Yeah. And I will like faint if I don't have red meat somewhere within the day. Like, I can't eat carbs. Like, I eat carbs like... what's that? Simple carbs, like the breads or flour based things. I feel like absolute dog shit. I inflame, you know, my body would be completely content just on steak and sweet potatoes all day, every day. And that's the thing I like about human design, is everyone's body is different. Everyone's system is different. Everyone's relationship with weed is different. Now there might be patterns, and my opinion on those patterns are going to be based on my life experience.
And that's so like the message there is like, there's no sense in worrying about what other people are doing, because like they've got different input, different stuff that's going on with them that they need to abide by that might not be applicable to you. But I guess it would be like, you can find interest in what other people are doing and what's working for them, and be open and go, oh, that's interesting. That I like, that makes sense. Let me see if I can try that. Oh, no, it doesn't work for me. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
all good. That just works for them, doesn't work for me. And that's the space to be.
But if it triggers like, I'm doing something wrong because I'm doing
this person I like is,
that's the thing to root out.
Yes.
Like that's I think we were deeply controlled for a very long time using things like guilt, shame, blame, fault. Those are all like intense matrix traps.
You can't shove someone out of that,
Right.
They have to wait for people to just figure those things out themselves. And it's concerning ourselves so much with what other people are doing as a something that's going to allow us to be ourselves finally it is crazy. I mean, that's what we're programmed to do, though. It feels natural when you're just responding emotionally and stuff. But again, that's where I go back. It's like we've been programmed that way for a purpose. It's very advanced. It's worth trying to look into that for yourself and keep digging down. Where is this motivation coming from? Oh, it's an emotional state that's mimicking a trauma when I was a kid, and I can't even get a hold of that. I just automatically respond. Let me try to calm down and get underneath where that trigger is. And that's the liberating process, I think. But it's so difficult when you're programmed to do the other thing. And that's when I found out that was that's the purpose, and that's it's that advanced, and that's where the feeding's happening. That was enough of conviction for me to be like, okay, I want to figure what the fuck. I really got to get down into myself and figure out what is me and what is some program, because I don't want to be fed on, and I want to be able to autonomize and generate my own reality. And the thing that's stopping me is I'm consistently being fed off of and giving emotion to other things that don't matter.
Yeah. There was another comment that said something like, what if you made about me, what if you made the morning breakfast, the morning drink healthy? So there's this hamster wheel effect in reality that you and I have noted, where, and it seems to be connected to dopamine, but where the acquisition of the dopamine sticks you in a loop. So the whole day ends up playing on a loop. So it's not that the morning beverage was not healthy. It's that if I start my day with a hot beverage, I set the tone for the day as sedentary. And then I don't know how to describe it, but it's like every couple of hours, I need this hot beverage again. I've also experienced this with salty and sweet foods. So if I grab a snack and it's something crunchy and salty, I then crave something sweet. I then crave something salty. Mm-hmm. I then crave something sweet. And that's all I'll do all day. It's I won't be able to accomplish anything because I'm on this fucking hamster wheel. And it was like that when I smoked cigarettes. It was you smoke a cigarette and then you get 45 minutes of doing something before you have to go back and smoke a cigarette again. And not only does it fuck up your ability to produce things, which some of this could just be ADHD, but it also, I don't know how to describe it, but it affects how deep your consciousness can go that day. Because if I'm chained to the hot, creamy beverage, and I've just learned that, a la Jack Cruz stuff, if the first thing I do is get out into the sun, get sun in my eyes, get my feet on the ground, I have a completely different day than if the first thing I do is look at my phone.
Yeah.
I've learned that if I start looking at TikToks before the evening, I can't stop. I am trapped in a loop. And so for me, I didn't suspect this ever because I just, my mom always had a cup of coffee in the morning. I didn't realize that I am establishing a sitting and sipping hot beverage loop for myself by doing that in the morning. So now that's just not a part of my morning is, I look at the phone, but it's check emails and texts or whatever. But then I am out for a walk, I'm getting sunlight and I'm moving. And it has completely changed my day. And they're just, I don't know how to describe it, but these 45-minute dopamine loops that I've had, by the way, my entire life, because it was cigarettes from the time I was 19 to 29 to beverages after that. You know, I used to drink so much fucking espresso when I was working in restaurants. It's just always something. I just always have something in my hand, something I'm consuming, consume. And then it's intermittently, you know, food that my body doesn't even fucking like. And so what I've been able to do in the last couple of months, and who knows if it'll stick, but I've been able to stretch it to where, I don't know, I'm just not stuck on that hamster wheel. And so it's like similar in what I've watched you deal with weed is we're not even just like talking about being high or marijuana itself or whatever. We're talking about like chained to a thing, a baba, or is that what you call it? Like a pacifier that you're not, like, we can't do anything without, it's the life revolves around making sure you're the exact level of high all day.
Yeah.
You can't, if we go out for lunch and we don't get back fast enough and you've run out of how high you were, you're grouchy, you know. Yeah. It's if we go out and I can't find a coffee shop to get the fucking matcha or the chai latte or the whatever. I don't have a fucking coffee in my hand. I've been doing that for decades, you know? And so it's something about, I think it's just literally the dopamine, but it traps you in like a shallow part of reality that your body is just chained to this fucking, like hitting the button to feel good for 5 seconds, you know?
And that's where that, again, I just keep bringing it back to this feeding thing. It's a dark reality, but it's not dark if you actually just see it. But that's a feeding mechanism. It's like when you continue, like you said, you spend your consciousness on like hitting that dopamine button, which again is a chemical system inside of us that has been put there so it's easily satiated and will keep you kind of complacent in whatever content and whatever you're doing. You can't plumb the depths of you can't use your consciousness to actually go deeper and get into a different place because you're consistently giving up hitting the dopamine button and keeps you locked in that pattern, which is just siphoning off the energy. And the paradox is if you stop hitting the button and actually generate your own contentment or dopamine kind of hits with different things that are actually just your own body, and like then you're generating the energy yourself. You're not feeding it to anybody. This is creating a closed system for yourself. And it's everywhere. It's like it is in the chemical makeup of like seeking pleasure, because the ultimate reality of this kind of situation we're in is a transformational one, which means it's constant pain and change. It's just, that's what it is. And what a great way to like keep people in it is just offer these like really ecstasy moments that are futile. They don't last, and you have to keep hitting them so you can just be okay being here. But when you let go of that loop, you actually find more peace and more stable ground to generate your own energy and control your reality, I guess. Not control, but harmonize with the moving reality that you are, that is ever changing and expanding. Yeah. So it's like that illusion is like we think we're expanding by keeping the pleasure system going and staying happy, but it actually is that there is a ceiling to it, and it's kind of an illusion of heightened awareness that is hard to sustain without the thing, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like it shows up a bunch of different ways, right? So for some people, it's seeking external validation. For some people, it's addiction to outrage, I think is there are people who have no idea that it's like you cannot fucking wait to get on the internet and find something to be outraged about. Like, because
it's an addiction to suffering too, and guilt. Like all of that is...
And by addiction, I just mean like trapped in a state of like repeating the exact same experience over and over again. Yeah. But I think that shows up different for different people. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we're not personally, individually ready to have that experience yet, then we're not ready to have that experience yet. So if we hear someone else talk about it, I just don't think we should be building cultures around anything other than individuating. So the culture is like, where are you at? What are you experiencing? What feels true to you? Like, oh, you heard that someone else quit weed. Is that something you want to do? cool, then use this as inspiration. Is that something that you're like, I'm not there at all? It's not making me sick. I don't feel like I'm on a hamster wheel. I'm having fun with it. And then it's like, then the opinions of people who are doing something different don't need to affect you. They don't matter. Do your thing. They don't matter.
Totally.
I have to go to the bathroom. Do you have to go to the bathroom?
I don't. I will patiently wait.
Then I guess I'll go by myself.
Okay. We usually spider. So if you don't know what spidering is, that's when the girl sits down, spread eagle, and then the guy straddles her and pees through her legs so you can pee at the same time. And you can kind of cross streams. It's very romantic. I'll shut up now. So shall we move on from cannabis?
Spidering.
And spidering. Well, we could move into spidering if you want. I can expand.
It sounded like you did a fucking.
I did a brief overview.
A full overview of it. I don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but we need to talk about this. Today in Reality is Not Real. Someone sent me this in the community. This is a man who does Bitcoin University on YouTube. He has 267,000 subscribers. And it's pretty dry. I mean, it's pretty dry stuff. He did a video about, I'm just going to play it for you.
About Bitcoin security and mental telepathy. What I really wanted to call this video was, can nonverbal autistic children steal your Bitcoin? That's not a trolling title, and I mean it with all the love in the world for these amazing children, as you're going to see in this video.
Okay, so as... the way that the new reality is going to meet the old reality, it's already happening. The way these two worlds are going to converge is so funny to me. First of all, it's funny to me that like telepathy, which is actually a threat to capitalism, in that once we really start to understand the ways in which we are connected, capitalism will just like obviously make no sense whatsoever. So it's a threat in that way. But the way that the capitalist colonized mind like immediately thinks, are these telepathic kids going to steal my Bitcoin?
It's so funny, dude.
But also the way that these things are just going to become mainstream so fast after hundreds of years of being hidden, is, I don't know. That's just so, it's already so cartoonish. And I feel like people don't truly appreciate how fast culture, like the human consciousness, is shifting into non-physical reality. Yeah, I mean, the comments on that were fucking great. Someone said I picked a bad day to start new meds.
Comment sections are like where the real, that's like, it's the best comedic platform. People shine so well in that space.
So fun.
Yeah, so that's the telepathy is going to crack open a lot of the shadow parts of capitalistic society. Like so much of capitalism works because of secrecy and being able to like have your privacy of certain ways you do things. And that can, you can have advancement over others with like a certain business model that you keep private, allows you to have leverage over others. And telepathy is just going to like crack open so many aspects of that where it is going to malfunction, but there's going to be a desperate attempt to try to save it all within that. And that's like exactly what this is. He feels like he needs to make a whole video of how to protect your crypto from the telepathic wonder kids.
Yeah, and I didn't watch the whole thing, but it also kind of felt like he was just very excited about the telepathy tapes and wanted.
I mean, I like that he did put a caveat. Like, I'm not trying to troll. I'm saying this from the heart.
Sounds so very
it's
funny,
authentic. It's great, But funny attempt that the cross of planning is going to do to try to like save itself.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. We talked about this on a car ride, but I was thinking about how computers and technology have been the allegory for us to conceptualize what we are. So for a long time, now I feel like everyone says it, but for 20 years, not into microphones, I would tell people that if it came up in conversation, that reality was a video game. And there was a point where that was like a wild thing to say, but people could kind of connect to that. Like, oh, okay, so then my consciousness is going into a video game, whatever. And the algorithm that we experience on these social media apps is the best way to articulate what reality creation actually is, which is what you pay attention to then starts to show up.
Yeah.
In the algorithm, right? And so I was thinking about how much of our lives, like those of us that are alive right now and on the internet right now, how much of our lives is impacted by algorithms, and how a lot of these algorithms, how accurate they are and how fast they are, and how like now there's shit coming up that you just thought about, you didn't even say out loud, you know? And then I was thinking about how when I was growing up, we were talking about music, and I didn't ever listen to indie music until like 2019 because I didn't know it existed. I would have loved it, but I didn't know it existed because the radio was where I was hearing music, and I mostly hated the songs on the radio, like the songs that were popular and they would play to death. I would just be like, how does anyone like this shit? And I felt like it was happening to me. Music was happening to me against my will. And so, you know, I would have like when possible CDs or whatever, but I would just end up listening to the same shit that I listened to before. Cause I don't know. I didn't know there was this like whole other world where you could like read magazines to find out where songs were or whatever. I think that's more your generation thing. My generation didn't really.
You didn't know about
that.
The indie radio stations.
Right.
You just went for the pop.
No, I mean, I was on like alternative radio, but it's still very mainstream.
Still alternative indie was like pretty pop, you know.
I don't think we had indie radio stations.
I mean, we have for a long time, but it was still very controlled.
We have those in Delaware?
I mean, as far as I know, they were across the country, but you had to search for them for sure.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like on the popular radio stations. You get in your car and you kind of rifle through. It was always like a deep cut somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, when like Sirius came on, then there was a lot more space for it.
Right.
But even when my band we were like successful, MGMT was kind of the first one, and they kind of opened the door for us, to be honest. I think that's why a lot of people compared us to them. But MGMT and us, as far as I am aware, and it's not tooting my own horn, but it was just a timing thing. We were one of the first bands to successfully cross from indie radio to pop radio. And once that started happening again and again after us, a lot of bands were starting to do that. Indie music started to become much more of a mainstream phenomena, and there was a market for it. So then radio stations started taking risks and really playing. A lot of popular radio stations started taking risks. I think there were these really diehard DJs that found a way to find a station on an AM radio or something like off in the deep that were always really great at being not conforming to any kind of mainstream thing. But I think in that era, like 2010, when my band blew up, it opened the door for indie artists to really like have a space. And then like magazines and places like what's the shit, I can't remember it now. It's like the well-known, they are like so arrogantly independent, and when they review a record, if you get a bad review from them, like it tanks your record sales. What is that fucking magazine? I forget the name. But anyways, there were like started to be publications and stuff that were actually like amplifying the indie music, and so it became much more mainstream.
Yeah, so that's when you were in your 20s, and I think I was well into my 30s and having kids by then. But so I just didn't know, I guess, that there was a world outside, that there was other music available. I mean, I guess I'm sure I knew that, but I don't know. I was also dissociated. But when you think about technology as an allegory for consciousness, and as the technology that we have access to shifts, it is an allegory for what our consciousness is doing. We were forced into an algorithm not of our own creation. And the radio and the music playing in the background of my life up until 2014, 2015 was against my will. And it was mainstreamed. Like, we were all forced into this one reality. We all knew the movie stars in the 90s. We all knew the exact same stars. I don't know who any of these fucking people are now. And I get the part of that's the age. But like, when my parents were in their late 40s, they knew every movie star.
Right.
Do you know? We all knew the exact same people. We all heard the exact same music.
Entertainment was so controlled. It was really
so controlled.
Like the TV, you never had any autonomy to be able to like pick and choose.
Right.
You just had 4 channels to whatever it was, you know. And now with the internet, you can curate your own thing.
Yeah, I mean,
standards.
I remember when On Demand started, or On Demand was crazy, and then a DVR where you could start to record your shows and watch them later. Like, I don't think people understand when you're looking at, let's say, boomers and older, these people's minds were all locked into the exact same reality, very refined, you know, very laden with propaganda. My parents' generation, it was like there's 3 channels. Everyone's watching the exact same shows, listening to the exact same music.
And how much that controls your perception.
Your perception of
daily
reality
life is wild. That's why it's like it seems so difficult to wake up out of those eras, because it's just all propaganda controlled, and you don't even have the capacity to think twice about it. You take whatever is being said as reality. You know?
Yeah.
And even the subtle programming that's coming through the like fictional stuff that is like storytelling, but there's like programming in that. So it's making you think, it's making you have fears of a certain thing in reality that like maybe it's not a real fear, but now you're living that way, you know?
Yep.
Once again, Predator's mind is just like it controls every goddamn aspect of it.
Yeah. And so now you have everyone lives in their own algorithm. Everyone, you know, we've learned this a couple times on this podcast. Like, I'll reference something that I just assume everyone has seen, but then I get reminded over and over again, like I'm living in a bubble on the internet. The music is specific to me, the content is specific to me, the perspective is, you know, specific to me, and that is an allegory of what's happening to reality. Cross the planning is everyone has to be on the same page, and Cross the Sleeping Phoenix is we might physically appear to be in the same space, but we are very much in our own bubbles and drifting off, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a control thing, but I think it was also just representative of what the video game was.
Yeah.
Where now, the other thing I think is interesting about the algorithm is I find it super annoying in the 3D, but also reading it as an allegory is interesting, is that Instagram used to be, you saw everyone you followed. And now if I post something, like I'm promoting shows right now, it's not showing it to the people that fucking follow me, which is so annoying. Because those are the people that I want to know about the show, not randos, you know? But when I look at that from an allegory perspective, it's like, oh, yeah, because who we're already connected to or who we've already built realities with are going to matter kind of less and less. It's going to be about resonance. And so the algorithm is taking my post and going, here's people out here looking at similar things.
Yeah.
I don't care that you're already attached to these other people.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know? And that is, I think, a big part of the next, you know, probably 20 years at least, is us learning about resonance and alignment over commitment and allegiance, you know?
Or like idealism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, you're going to sync up with the things that you're vibrationally aligned with. And where we used to kind of like outwardly attach to things and identify with things, but that identifying with things is also kind of tribal.
Which is so beautiful because that like validates, like if you just are authentic online and like put out your frequency, you will find people that resonate on that frequency.
Right.
And if you change frequencies, as we do, we grow and change, then those people might fall off, but then you're going to find a new frequency. It secures like success for anybody on even small levels, and the ability for you to monetize in so many different ways on the internet. Any niche you're doing, there's a way to make money off of it, and you have to have an audience, but like all you have to do is put your authentic self out and you can find an audience.
Right.
You don't need 1 million people to make money. You just need 100 subscribers, and boom, you can find success. It's a really great thing, but it's hard to adjust to that because we, have experienced a different reality up until this point where you really had to play the system to get success, and sacrifice some of your individuality for it. And so now I think that's why we're both so gung-ho on authenticity and autonomy, because there is a path forward that's like going to be extremely liberating and wonderful, but it's deprogramming these ideas that we have to homogenize or go to a big system and mainstream the thing. It's a dying system,
Yeah. And money here just being the allegory of like, yeah, I guess energy.
Yeah.
Attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sucks for people, I think, who really mastered the old way, because it just could not be more different. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, let's say you built something really successful off of your ability to assimilate, and now it's like, psych!
Yeah. It's rough.
And reverse.
It's rough.
All right. When's this coming out? This is coming out Sunday. I will be in Portland, is sold out. I'll be in Mesa, Arizona, Wednesday. Salt Lake City, Thursday. Boise, Idaho, Friday and Saturday. Twin Falls, Idaho. I remembered it. Sunday. The next week, Philly, Baltimore, and Frederick. And then that's it. I'm going back into retirement. So smoke 'em while you got 'em. Mark has sessions. Love you. Bye.
Bye.